Welcome back to TechCon 2025, everyone. I'm Brian Wilson, and I'm your host all day today in the API Management and Gateways track. Hopefully, you've been here before. We think you're probably pretty familiar with the format by now, but for those that might be new to us, a few reminders. Please don't be shy, submit questions in the chat. Also, at the end of the session, there will be a survey. It will show up in the bottom left corner of your window. Please take a minute and answer that survey to provide us the feedback to keep improving TechCon year after year. All right, and with that, let's get started. We've got great speakers in the session today. So we've got Sachar, Amit, and Ulas, and I'm going to turn it over to Ulas to take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. Today we're gonna talk about our DataPower Operation Dashboard. So we want to give you a quick overview of the key value of DataPower Operation Dashboard first, if you are not familiar with it. And we will go through our key updates in about a year or so. So our key innovations that happened since you last been here, probably. And then at the end, you will also see a live demo from Amit. So yeah, with that said, let's start. Data Power Operation Dashboard. So first of all, what is Data Power, right? So just let me quickly go through this first. So in case again you are not familiar with it. Data Power is not just another runtime, not just another gateway. So it is basically our IBM strategic enterprise gateway. That's kind of it sits between different networks, mission critical applications, and links them in a controlled, secure, and optimized way. And by doing so, of course, it combines the various workloads from modern event-based workloads to API workloads to traditional services, applications, and it's been widely used around the world across many industries. And one thing to notice is as I said, it is not just a gateway; it also powers our API connects API gateway and giving all the fantastic capabilities like routing, rate limiting, the AI gateway functionality in the API Connect. So in that respect, it is extremely critical to just nurture the data power gateway, because it's as I said, it's not just a runtime, it's not just some kind of management plane. So it is handling all these critical workloads, transaction across many countries and industries. So and with that said, in order to, what I'm saying is, so in order to make the most out of your data power gateway, to make it more reliable, to make it more stable, and to get most out of it in the critical production systems, we offer a premier tool. So we as IBM for just data power gateway, so just for monitoring and managing and doing lots of things to keep your data power environment happy and up and running. So that's very important for us to give that visibility, observability with this special tool. So yeah, you guessed it correct. So what we are talking about is DPOD, Data Power Operation Dashboard. Gives you the central flexibility, advanced troubleshooting, and lots of critical management functionalities for data powers. And DPOD can and also monitor or manage various DataPower form factors. If you are not aware, DataPower comes in multiple form factors, right? From physical appliances to virtual form factors like VMware, Linux, and containers. So depot can manage and monitor all of these form factors. So it's that's not there's no exception to that. And on top of that, obviously, it can also monitor your API connects, API gateway environments, can pull the analytics data from API connect and gives you one single plane to monitor and manage both your API connect environment and the DataPower environments, regardless of the form factors. So if we look into these unique critical functionalities, so what is important, right? We talk about the central visibility. So basically, in the depot, you get those centralized and most importantly, customizable real-time dashboards. So you would be able to visualize all the resource utilization, latency, errors, if any, happening, and ensure that you're compliant with your business SLAs. And you will be able to, in real time, see the transaction analysis, transaction correlation across different DataPower services, APIs, and you will be able to detect lots of other things like early failing requests, so you can act quickly on those kind of early failing requests. And along with this central visibility, of course, we provide the best-in-class troubleshooting for the developers, for the service creators in DataPower, API developers in API Connect. In Depot, you get that transactional data and logs, most importantly, for every invocation. You will see the visual flow diagram, you will see the latency down to the policy and processing action level. You will be able to see the payloads, you would be able to trace downstream invocation details. And so we have one exciting feature that Amit will announce later. So we improved our error analysis as well, because now with each error analysis, you will not only get the root cause or the reason for the error, but you will also get some remediation actions. And one thing to highlight here in this troubleshooting, you don't need to be a seasoned DataPower admin or expert. So Depot will give people with no prior or less DataPower experience to figure out what's going on in this process. Very, very important. And the third thing is reports and alerts. So obviously you will be able to get some alerts to quickly act on some important things like certificate expirations or sudden spikes, high transaction latency, and specific errors. We would be able to define these alerts and of course export these errors to external systems if you want to also notify about this alert in another system. And the fourth one is that's also a unique differentiator, right? DataPower Operations Dashboard is not just a monitoring solution. It gives you the ability to manage your data powers, like scheduled backups, very important, or firmware upgrades. That makes the firmware upgrades much more seamless, smooth. Configuration synchronization, bulk configuration synchronizations between gateways, perhaps, or appliance migration, so something that Depot can guide you as well. So basically, so for the operational daily tasks, it will also give you a hand. So yeah, not only for monitoring in that sense. And the next thing I want to mention is all these features. So basically, all these features would be available to the entire organization. How? So this sounds scary, but basically Depot provides a customizable roles, self-service roles for your own requirements. So for instance, you might have a separate operation teams. These roles are just a representative. So you might have more than the roles I'm displaying here, or you might have less. Maybe only one DataPower team is responsible for everything. I don't know. But the key thing is you can specify these roles and you can give different access levels to your DataPower box via Depot. So you don't need to go and ask the admin to give developers to give DataPower production access straight away. That sounds scary, and it's happening. I know who are not aware of Depot maybe, and then developers just go and do on the fly updates on the production machines. So with this, so you give operation team only the certain things for them to see, for example, CPU memory usage. DataPower admin, obviously, they need to do all the tasks like the things that I discussed, right? So all the maintenance tasks. Maybe production support team, they are not really DataPower experts, but they need to see certain metrics logs. So you expose those things to that team. One thing interesting here before I continue, for example, API consumer. So zero DataPower expertise. They don't need to know anything about the DataPower runtime, API gateway runtime. You give access to specific API invocations for this kind of group, the consumer developers, just to see their API client issues and diagnose those kind of issues and resolve those issues themselves without reaching out to your DataPower admin team. So very flexible in that sense. And moving forward, so this is where I'm going to hand over to Amit. So because we will talk through our latest highlights, that's our latest innovation that happened in 2024 and up to this point. So Amit, over to you. Thank you. I will now stop sharing and yeah.
Thank you, Ulaş. Sure. So speaking about the 2024 delivery highlights, I will go really fast on what was introduced. We will then dive into each one of them, and we'll show an online demo for these features. So the first one is that Ulaş mentioned is an enhanced API error analysis. We actually added to the error analysis of that Depot already had a wider range of errors, and as well as we added additional description, investigation suggestions, and possible solutions so Depot can suggest different ways of solving the issue. This is where the Depot knowledge of DataPower and API Connect comes into play. It will inspect the errors that were issued during the transaction processing, and will be able to suggest multiple ways how to solve it. We will see it in a second. We've also significantly enhanced the transactional view for the gateway transaction. This is about gateway services, multi-protocol gateways, web service proxies. Now there's a flow diagram that can show you each one of the actions that were processed during the processing rules. So you can visually inspect the time that every policy took. So any latency issues you can investigate really easily. We've also added support for the gateway, for the new gateway probe. If you're not familiar with that, the DataPower Gateway has introduced a new probe, a new gateway probe. There are also in sessions, in TechCon about that as well, where you can collect debug level information, the same as you could do with the old probe. And then you can offload this information off the DataPower gateway into dpod. And within the context of the transaction, you can see a lot of more details about the content, the headers, the variables, action configuration, as and more. So if you really need to investigate an issue, you can switch on the probe, gather the information, and show it within dpod. I will show exactly how to do it, what are the prerequisites, and everything. We've also put a lot of effort in performance improvement. We redesigned the components that collect the data into dpod, process it, parse it, digest it into the dpod store, and we have been able to show a dramatic improvement, about 8 times higher transactions per second the dpod can process on a single virtual machine, which is a really great performance improvement. We expect that to be even better, a little better in the future. And for the vast majority of the customers to use virtual deployments for dpod. So if you are currently a customer of dpod and you use physical infrastructure and you need to replace it, so that is one thing that you should think about. Maybe migrate into a virtual environment with it, which is more manageable. We've also added support for running dpod on AWS and Azure with recommended instance types for these types of cloud providers. So we also made a lot of improvement to the installation and upgrade. Things run smoother, faster, more interactive. It will ask you all the questions. It will highlight any issues in the prerequisites. Everything is much easier. We also added the long-term statistics, which is statistical information that dpod stores every 15 minutes about the API and service invocation. So that can be stored for a much longer term than the very detailed information about each transaction in dpod. You can this way store years of history of invocation to do some trend analysis over time for your transactions. We've also introduced support for two new licenses. There is the VPC license and the API calls. I'll talk about it in a second, but these are two new options that you can use for dpod licensing that can be more cost effective for these use cases. So another feature that worth mentioning is the support for containerized gateways. So these are DataPower gateways that run within Kubernetes or OpenShift. It's not a new feature, but we keep improving it. We've made it more flexible, more robust. As customers move towards containerized gateways, this is something that we put some effort into. So you can use the dpod cloud agent, which is a component of dpod that you deploy in Kubernetes, to automatically discover the DataPower gateways, collect information, and send it to a central dpod installation from one or more Kubernetes clusters. So just keep that in mind. If you are moving into a containerized environment, then definitely all the features of dpod are also available there. About the license, I would like to highlight the differences between the licenses, just so you understand which use case is better for each type of license. The dpod per gateway is the license that exists for years, and it's per instance. So each DataPower gateway that you want to manage with dpod, that you connect to dpod, will require a license, whether it's a physical gateway, whether it's a virtual machine with 20 cores, or whether it's a container or a virtual machine with a single core. That's per instance. The new dpod for virtual is based on VPCs, virtual processing cores, and this one that you can also convert into PVUs, and suitable for virtual gateways, whether these are containerized gateways or virtual gateways. You can match the VPC or the PVU metric to the ones that you have for the gateway, and this one is mostly appropriate for small virtual machines, with a single core, 2 cores, things like that, or for gateways that are containerized. Because as customers move to containerize, it's very common practice to see that customers split their physical or their big virtual gateways into many small containerized gateways. And if you use the dpod per gateway license metric, that becomes very expensive, not very cost effective. So this is also something, as you move towards containerized gateways or many small virtual gateways, you should definitely consider the dpod for virtual new license, which is a perfect match for this use case. If you're using API Connect only, there is the API use case, which is the dpod which is based on API call volumes, both if you use it for CP4I as well as API Connect Hybrid Edition. If you license your DataPower gateways per API calls, then you can do the same for dpod, and then it doesn't really matter how many gateways you have. It's just per API call. So this is also something that you should consider. Let's drill down to some of the features about the API error analysis. So as I said, we significantly improved that to detect more errors, to include all kinds of suggestions. So now when you look at a specific transaction, this is a transaction page in dpod about an API invocation. When you look at it, dpod will detect any errors that exist. Even if it's multiple errors, you will see the error analysis summary here with the list of all the errors that dpod detected. It will detect the policy where the error has occurred, and we'll also put distinctive icons, for each one of the policy. And when you click the policy and look at the details of this one, it will provide a very detailed error analysis, including a description of the error analysis, ways for further investigation, so how to collect more data about this issue. For example, we're looking at a connection issue with a timeout, and one of the suggestions of dpod is that you use the TCP connection test from the DataPower gateway to see if there is really a connectivity issue with the backend URL, as well as ways to solve the problem. So if you begin your journey with API Connect, or if you are an API consumer with no knowledge of the API Connect infrastructure, then this is really helpful, because it will tell you how to change your request to match it to the requirements of the API, things like that. I will show it in the demo. So this is a really nice enhancement that we really like, and proud that we added that. About the gateway transaction flow, we redesigned the gateway transaction page to include a flow diagram of all the actions, of the processing rules. You have the names of the processing rules down here, the request rule, the response rule, also error rule, if exists. So it's much more intuitive to just look at the flow, understand, a latency issue, what's causing a latency issue, or which actions really got invoked in this specific invocation. So very similar to what we had for the API gateway transactions for a while. Now we also added it to the gateway services transaction view. This is the for multi-protocol gateways, web service proxies, these kinds of services. And finally, the gateway probe. When you enable the gateway probe, as I said, you get tons of data. You can see the content, you can see headers, variables, everything. I will show it on the demo. So this is also super useful. I will show how to create a gateway probe, what are the prerequisites, what kind of data we see there, etc. So before we start with the online demo, just one word about that in 2025, this year, we plan to add some certificate management capabilities to dpod. So of course, this is not a commitment and plans may change, but we really want to look into how we can help customers manage certificates on the DataPower gateways. We know it's something that many customers need. We plan to add, an ability to search for certificates, show certificates information like the CN, expiry dates, issuers, signatures, things like that. So you can search for the certificates, and also an ability for impact analysis to understand where this certificate is being used, by which services and APIs, and maybe also an ability to upload certificates through dpod to multiple gateways at once. So this is something that we will really be happy to receive any feedback or any requirements that you may have. During this session, you can use the Q&A for that, to ask questions or to tell us what you think about that and what requirements you think this kind of feature should have. And of course, after TechCon is over, you can of course submit a request for enhancement or RFEs via the IBM Ideas portal. So we will be very happy to receive any feedback you have on that. Okay, so let's start with the demo. Switching to the demo, I will show for about 5 minutes a very quick overview for those of you who are not familiar with dpod yet, so they understand what kind of capabilities we have in dpod. So dpod has, as we mentioned before, supports both DataPower services as well as API Connect use case. It has 2 product views. One is specifically for the gateway, one is specifically for the API Connect. So you can switch between them. If you click on the gateway, there are many dashboards that you can see, starting with the recent activity that shows an overview of all your activity across all the DataPower gateways. And system health that shows all the gateways with any issues that they might have, like this gateway which was unavailable for a while, or CPU issues, things like that, and a lot more dashboards. If we switch back to API Connect, so again, a different set of dashboards specifically for API Connect. All the filters are specific for API Connect. Many dashboards, about the activity of your APIs, latency, of course, response codes to investigate any issues, of course, consumers, any restarts that your gateway may have. So we can see that there are a couple of restarts here that we initiated. You can see dpod also collects resources information like CPU, memory, load, file system statistics, etc. It can also alert and show any certificates that are about to expire or certificate that already expired. There's the long-term stats that I mentioned before, a new feature that we added this year to show invocation data for years. And that's it. I mean, a lot of information for dashboards, which you can use to identify any issues and then drill down to specific transactions and further investigate the issues. Switching to the investigate part of dpod, this will actually show each and every transaction that was processed by your DataPower gateways with the ability to drill down. So if we open a couple of transactions and we drill down to a transaction, you can see some details about the transaction invocation, how this API is published, name of the product, etc. Details about the consumer. You can see a breakdown of the latency, the error analysis that I'm going to show in depth in a minute. So here you can see all kinds of errors that you had. You can, of course, click on a policy and see all the details with the detailed error analysis and suggestions. Of course, dpod keeps all the log records, all the log messages for a transaction. It can also capture payload, so request and response of transactions. It can correlate transactions between gateways or between services. If you have one API that is invoking a DataPower service or another API, of course, dpod can correlate that based on the global transaction ID, and you can switch between these service invocations, which are part of the same global flow, and more. I mean, there's a lot more that you can see. You can enable the probe. We'll see it in a second and get a lot more information about the each and every invocation of a transaction. Under the Explore part of dpod, you can see different types of information. So first is the failed object, any object that is in the DataPower gateway that is currently down but enabled. You can see which services are currently deployed, the like DataPower services that are deployed. The dpod can also detect any configuration changes that you perform to DataPower services, and also you can invoke simple actions on your DataPower gateway services, like enabling, disabling, import a new version of the service, update the WSDL, things like that. You can also use dpod for that. So dpod is, as we said, it's not just a monitoring tool, definitely very helpful to also manage the configuration and help you manage your gateways. Under reports and alerts, you can have various reports and alerts. Everything that I will show you today probably has an alert that exists out of the box. So you can get alerted for CPU, certificates, load, latency, errors, any log message that you would like to get alerted for. You can definitely create alerts in dpod and send it through an HTTP request or syslog or email or anything you like. And under manage, dpod allows you to perform backups, whether it's a secure backup or just export of the domains. You can upgrade the firmware, you can synchronize domains. So definitely periodic maintenance tasks that you probably do for your virtual and physical gateways. And everything is, of course, restricted by roles and permissions. So you can decide for each and every user whether they can see the logs, whether they can see the probe data, or even manage the probe data, create new probes, things like that, and also limit them to specific services or APIs. So that was a very, very quick overview of dpod for those of you who are not familiar with that. So specifically for this session, I'm going to focus on the new features of dpod, which is the error analysis and the transactional flow and probe. So to start with the API error analysis, I will switch to the API Connect, to the API Manager, and we will have a look at an API. A very common issue is for API consumers to send a wrong request. It might be that a field is missing, or maybe they use the wrong type, the wrong format, they send the wrong header, or anything else that might get wrong within the request. So let's have a look on the API. For that, we have developed an API that is called missing field, and if we look at this API, you can see the flow. In a second, under the gateway view, you can see the flow. We're using the withdraw flow, where you can see that we have a validate policy. I mean, we get the request, we parse it, and we validate. The validation is performed against a definition, which is the post-root object. If we look at the design, at the definitions, at the post-root object, and have a look of what it is, we see that it's actually a reference to the post data. And if we look for the post data, we can see that actually it contains two properties, the amount to withdraw and the customer ID, where both are required. So let's see what happens when an API consumer decides not to send the customer ID, which is a mandatory field. If we go to dpod, let's close this. If we go to dpod on the API Connect view, we will start investigating such issues with the HTTP response code dashboard. Here we can see all kinds of errors that we get, the 4344, etc. And since we know that this is a wrong request, these are the 400s request, and let's focus on the 422. And we can see that we have 8,000 requests that have failed, and we want to investigate why. We click on investigate, we get a list of all the transactions with this response code 422. So you can see that, you know, in this demo environment we have all kinds of wrong requests, like the wrong field or too many fields, etc. I'm looking for the missing field, and let's drill down to this API of missing field. When you drill down to the API invocation, you can right away see that dpod has identified the error where there's a missing mandatory property, which is called the customer ID. And if we look at the payload, we can see that the actual payload does not include the customer ID field. It contains another. I mean, you know, there was a mistake and the consumer sent a customer instead of customer ID. So right away, dpod identified that. In the flow, you can see that you know, that is a withdraw action. You see it in the URL, and you can see that the switch parse and then the validate failed. You can see this red icon, and if we click on it, we can see some more details about this specific policy along with the error analysis. If we look at the error analysis along with the description of the mandatory property that is missing, we can actually see that we have suggestions for further investigation and how to solve the problem. And further investigation would be to use the payload tab or create a probe capture to inspect the actual payload that was validated. This is, of course, you know, the first step that you should do. This is what I did just, you know, when I showed you the actual request that was sent to this API. So if you're not familiar with dpod and you don't even know that dpod can capture the request or the response, you know, this will tell you go to the payload tab and have a look at the actual request that was received, so you can understand, you know, the type of data that was received. And dpod will also suggest that you inspect the validate policy configuration, the same thing that we just did. It suggests go to the API manager, you know, inspect the policy configuration, see the definition of the field or the object, and then you can understand which fields are mandatory and which are not. Solving the problem can be from two aspects. One is to fix the request, another is to fix the API. So this is what dpod recommends. You can change the payload to meet the definition of this API, which means, you know, please send a customer ID field that is mandatory, or you can change the property to optional in the definition of the API if you decide that the customer ID is indeed an optional field, which should not be sent with all the requests. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with API Connect at all, I mean, and you're just trying to consume an API, you go and you have access to dpod, of course, you can have a look, you can understand right away the issue and how to solve it. So let's see two more examples, and then I will continue to the other features. The first is about OAuth token. OAuth token issues can also, you know, be a bit complex for consumers, you know, because not all of them are familiar with what an OAuth token is and how you generate and what is scope, etc. So let's have a look at another API that we prepared for this use case. This one is called an unauthorized scope. And if we look at this API under the security, we can see that we require both client ID and an OAuth token, and we require the scope to be operations. Okay, so we have two scopes configured, but we require the OAuth token to have a scope of operations. Let's see what happens when a consumer tries to invoke the API with the wrong scope. So back to the dashboards. If we look again at response code, this one will be under 401, of course, because it's an authentication issue. So under 401, if we switch to transactions, we see nothing. That's because dpod detects or classifies this transaction as an early failing transaction, which was blocked by the API Connect framework. I mean, the API invocation didn't even reach the user policies that are configured in the API. It was rejected, for authentication. So dpod does know how to do this separation between real API invocations where the policy has been invoked to something that failed early. So if here we're looking for the token unauthorized scope and look at the error analysis, we see first of all that the API has errored in the pre-flow policies, and if you want to look at what happened here, you can switch between primary policies and all policies. Clicking on all policies will show you everything that the API Connect framework has invoked internally. You can see that under the security policy, the internal security policy, there was some kind of error. And if you look at what dpod has to say, it tells you that it failed to match the scope details of the OAuth token against the configured scope operations. So we require the operation scope, but the OAuth token was generated with the details scope, which is unauthorized to run this API. Again, dpod will suggest further investigation steps. You can inspect which scopes were used for generating the OAuth token, and of course, inspect the configured scope. These ones should match. And again, for solving the problem, you can invoke the API with a new OAuth token that you generate with the right scope, with the operation scope, or you can add the scope of details to the configuration of the API in the API manager, republish the API, and everything will work with the same OAuth token. You should decide, on the right solution for you. So this is also great. dpod knows how to detect various OAuth token issues, which, as I said, may be quite complex for consumers. So that is really great. The last example of the error analysis, I want to focus on some backend server issues. And for that, if we look at the API, we have an API that is on multiple invoke errors, where in the assembly of the API, we have multiple invokes and mapping. So we have this invoke and then a mapping policy and some additional invokes. The things I want to show you here is first that for the invoke policy, stop on error is disabled. So even if there is an error, the API does not stop; it continues. However, dpod still is able to detect the error and show it. And also for the mapping, you can see that we take the results of the invoke and we put it in these two attributes of the balance. So this is what we're going to see now in dpod. So back to dpod. Let's search for this API for multiple invoke errors, and if we look at this one, you can see that dpod detected all the errors, with the invoke and the mapping, even though the processing of the API did not stop. If you click on each one of the policies, you will get a detailed error analysis for this one. So for example, in this case, there was a response code 500 returned from the backend with various suggestions like use the probe capture to inspect the actual payload, because the probe capture, the API probe capture that exists in dpod for a while, can show you also requests and responses that are sent to the backend systems, which is really super useful for debugging such issues. So you can use the API probe capture to also get this kind of information and to to further investigate the issue. And also for the mapping, for example, it can show you which fields of the mapping failed. You can see the balance, and the output attributes, or fields. The mapping failed. That's because we got a bad response from the backend server, so we're not able to see that. If you enable the API probe feature, you will be able to see the input and the output of the mapping. You will be able to see the request and the response from the backend server. Super useful feature. So that's about the error analysis. Now about the gateway flow diagram. So for that, we will switch to the gateway view to have a look at the service latency dashboard. This is the dashboard where you start to investigate latency issues for DataPower gateway services. And we can right away see that we have these two services, the side calls that take 120 seconds and 130 seconds, and we want to investigate what is causing this kind of issue. So clicking on the service name will focus on this specific service, and then we can go to investigate and see all the transactions that belong to this service. Clicking on a transaction ID will take us to the transactional page for this specific gateway transaction, and you can right away see this flow is new. This one we introduced recently, which shows all the actions that were performed. So right away you see this transform action took about a second. This transform action took about 4 seconds, etc. So you can see all the information about which actions caused this kind of latency. You can see the rules, etc. So really super useful to understand what happened. In the blue boxes here are for network. So this is the time that took the gateway to read the request headers and to parse the request body. Of course, very fast. But these blue ones are the internal processing of the DataPower gateway. So again, this is super useful. But for example, it will not show you many details about the transaction, about the action. It can show that it's a transform action, but it doesn't have additional information about that. For that, there is the gateway probe. So to get additional data, dpod utilizes the new gateway probe, which provides tons of data. There are 2 prerequisites for that, and let me show you that. First is your DataPower gateway version. You need to have 10.5.0.12 and 10.6 for the gateway service, to utilize the new gateway probe. Once you have the right version, there's one thing you need to configure within the DataPower gateway, which is the gateway peering. So I'll demonstrate that really quickly. If we go to bank a domain and we search for gateway peering, you can see that I have created the dpod gateway peering. It's a very simple gateway peering. And you just provide it with a name and local address. In this case, Ethernet 0. The ports should be unique, and you should create a gateway peering for each one of the domains that you want to enable probe in. So you must set a unique ports. In my case, it's very simple. You don't even need to use a peer group or any TLS, and you can persist it in memory because dpod offloads all the data and store it within the dpod database. So it can be a really simple gateway peering. Once you have that, you can go to dpod and configure within the gateway. Clicking on a gateway name, you can set up. You have the probe setup. You click on Setup Probe, you select the gateway peering that you just created, and click on Configure. This will configure and will enable you to create new probe captures. Once you do that, which is a one-time task, and then you can do as many captures as you like. Under the Investigate, you can set up probes. We have a new tab, which is the Probe Capture tab, where you can create a new probe capture. You choose the gateway, you choose the domain that you just created, and limit it also to a service. And here you have multiple filters or multiple criteria that you can use to select or to selectively specify which transactions should be captured with probe data. So you can, for example, specify a specific header name, or any transaction that comes from a specific client IP or with a specific URI. You should really, especially in production environment, you should be very careful and specify exactly which transactions you want to include in this probe capture. dpod also allows you to specify a duration in minutes. So it will, after 60 minutes, we just shut down this probe, because usually the probes exist forever in the DataPower gateway. dpod will do it for you and can delete this probe after a while. You should always limit the capture count, and you can also set an interval, so only one transaction will be captured per second, or any values that you would like. These kinds of filters will allow such a probe capture also to run in production, for very specific transactions that you need. Once you create a probe capture, and I've also already created one, it will collect probe data about transactions. And let's have a look at the kind of the level of details that you get when you enable the probe. So looking at this, I want to open a couple of transactions. Let's have a look at one of them. Yeah, this one. So for the once you enable the probe, you get a lot more details for each one of your actions. So first of all, you can see that if an error has occurred, then you can see it using the probe and start investigating why. You can see all the actions, and for each action that you will choose, you will see a lot of information. Clicking on transform, for example, will show you the content. So input, output. If you're using pipe, you can look at it as well. So here you can inspect the actual payload or the actual content, throughout the processing of the rule. You can also look at the conditions, condition actions, and see the content, see the headers, see a list of all the variables that you have within the for each step in the rule, and also you can inspect the data where what happened exactly before the error occurred, and also after the error rule was triggered. You can see exactly all the actions that happened. And if you look at the last action under the content, you can see, of course, the result. Under output, you can see the result that was returned to the customer, to the consumer. So really super useful information. You can also see the action configuration. So if you click on the transform under action configuration, for example, you will see the name of the XSL file that was invoked. So all the configuration of the action you can also inspect using the probe. Super useful information for debugging. So with that, I want to conclude the demonstration. We saw the error analysis, how it can help you. You saw the new transaction flow and how to enable a probe for the DataPower gateway to see much more information. Super useful, and dpod is the only tool that can bring you all of this information, in one place in order for you to investigate the transactions. And if I want to conclude, the top 3 reasons for using dpod, first is reliability, because you get the most out of your gateways. You get a more reliable installation. You can monitor the health and utilization of the gateways. You can monitor your SLAs and detect any configuration issues, and use the dpod firmware upgrade to stay at current firmware. So really help you get the most reliable installation of DataPower. In terms of responsiveness, you have the ability to detect errors, to understand the root cause, to fix them much faster than you can without depot, especially where in environments where you have a lot of gateways to manage and fix errors. And you can use depot alerts to proactively respond before any consumer complains for anything. You know that you have a latency issues or an error issue, and you can react, and you accelerate both the development and testing of APIs, like we saw that consumers can understand what went wrong and fix their own requests. You accelerate the adoption of services and APIs for internal consumer, as well as the support effort for your DataPower team, for the rest of the organization. When you have depot, then you have many users to depot, and they can investigate on their own. So thank you for your time. If we have any questions that we need to answer, I would be happy to.
Thank you, Amit and Ulas, and thank you, Shachar, for answering the questions in the chat. Is there any question you, in the last minute here, want to bring forward and discuss, Shachar? Or are we good?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, very good. Well, then, again, thank you, everyone. Great start to today's TechCon. Thanks for arriving conversation ready with those questions. Reminder, we will have office hours, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time today. Give you a chance to talk right to our speakers, get questions answered, more complex questions, bring up a topic of discussion, talk about Adam's comments that he'll make today at noon, whatever is on your mind. So before you move on to the next session, remember, take that poll, that survey question, provide us feedback so we can keep improving TechCon sessions and the conference as a whole. Anything you have to share, we love the feedback. So get ready for your next session, enjoy the rest of the conference, and hope to see you again here.